To most people, the Bible seems intimidating. It's simply too large. There's too much to understand, and quite frankly, there's not enough time in our everyday lives to understand it all. Incidentally, religions.org reports that 78.4% of Americans identify with Christianity in one form or another as their personal religion. Coming from a family of pastors, I have been able to understand what the main concepts of the Bible are and what the reoccurring themes of the Bible are that make the Bible cohesive. Through peer review, I have learned that not enough of my peers are acquainted with the Bible, and I don't want the Bible to remain a mystery to everyone but me, so by imparting this speech, I plan to illustrate the reoccurring themes of the Bible found in 3 stories. The first story is the story of Abraham and his son Isaac. Now, Abraham has a song that's popular about him. The song goes like this: Father Abraham had many sons. That's the Abraham we're speaking of in this story. And the firstborn son of Abraham is another character in this story. In this story, God sent Abraham to slaughter his firstborn son as a sacrifice. Now, Abraham was a God-fearing man, so he listened to God. And right as he was about to slaughter his son, God intervened and said, Abraham, you have passed your test of faith. Instead, I will provide the sacrifice. And nearby at that moment was a wild ram that had caught itself by the horns in some bush. It was just too convenient for Abraham, but he took the ram anyway and slaughtered the ram instead of his son Isaac. This is the beginning of the main concept of the Bible, which is providence. This providence occurs once more in a different form in the story of Moses, while the Israelites were slaves in Egypt. Now Moses is sent by God to Egypt to free the Israelites, and he approaches Pharaoh and says, Pharaoh, you got to let these people go. But Pharaoh refuses, so God sends 10 plagues to Egypt. Each plague is worse than the one before it. The 10th was the worst of all. What would happen was that an angel would come through the land of Egypt and kill the firstborn son of every family, unless that family had took the initiative to wipe the blood of a sacrificed lamb above their door. Now Pharaoh refused, and his firstborn son died. Finally, Pharaoh realized that he had to listen to the God of Moses and let the people go. Now this theme is echoed once more of providence, only in this story Pharaoh refused the providence, and so his son died. The third story is a very popular tale. It's the most commonly known tale. It's taught by Jesus. It's called the parable of the prodigal son. In this story, there is a son who takes his inheritance early from his father, and he flees with it. Now this son has terrible financial management, and he blows his inheritance, and before you know it, he's broke, and he has to come back home. And when he comes back home, his father receives him with a lot of joy. And in fact, he throws a big festival, and he kills the family's fatted cow. Now the fatted cow in the family was the cow that was to be kept for nourishment for the harshest time of the year, but the father went and killed that cow. And when the older brother had seen what the father had done, he was angered, and he said, Father, why did you do this? Why did you kill the fatted cow? The father replies like this. He says, we had to celebrate because this brother of yours was dead, but he is alive again. He was lost, but now he is found. This story demonstrates that the inheritance that the father provided the son did not bring life to the son. Instead, life was only won when the father realized the same providence that God taught Abraham by offering the fatted cow as a celebration for the return of his lost son. In conclusion, it should be clear to understand now the cohesive element that is recurring throughout the Bible, and it is no mystery. Because I grew up within a family of Christian scholars, these understandings were made available to me. I often feel as though my peers are missing out on the basic knowledge of our nation's common religion. Eventually, God offered to us his last sacrifice. That was Jesus. And it opened the doors for salvation for the whole world. It was the death of God's Son, Jesus. If the reoccurrence of the theme of salvation by God offered sacrifice seems like something strange and yet familiar, it is because it was there all along, occurring and apparent in the stories before it. All these sacrifices that God had provided culminated in Jesus as the sacrifice for the whole world to have salvation, and that is the most apparent theme of the Bible.